So introduce yourself. What's your name, gender identity, pronouns, and any other identifiers?
My name is... Should I look at the camera? Does it matter?
My name is Yen Doan, and I am non-binary and use they/them pronouns.
My name is Frankie Lipscomb-Cobbs. I am non-binary, and my pronouns are they, them, theirs.
My name is Riley. I'm non-binary and I use they, them pronouns. I also go by Matt too sometimes. A lot of my friends call me Matt, but I mainly go by Riley.
What is your relationship with gender as a broad concept? In other words, how does society's definition of gender and your definition of gender differ and or crossover?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
I guess I don't really actually know society's definition of gender, but I'm gonna look it up. So the first thing that pops up after I Google gender is either of the two sexes, parentheses, male and female, especially when considered with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones.
Society's definition of gender is kind of black and white, like either you're male or you're female, and not a lot of people seems to want to be more open to the concept that gender is more fluid.
So I guess I don't think I really fit in that definition of gender since it's binary and I am non-binary.
You can be non-binary, you can be gender fluid, you can feel more like a woman but still identify as non-binary, you can feel more like a man and still identify as non-binary.
I feel like I don't really have a relationship with gender at all.
I mean, I guess my relationship with gender as a broad concept is more or less I don't really want, I don't want anything to do with how Western society has defined gender in the sense of like it being a very binary thing.
I guess my definition of gender would be like, the two genders, male and female, like what the definition said, except for like there are people who identify as neither or both. So I definitely think there's more beyond the binary. There's more than two genders. There are people that identify as the like third gender, other.
A lot of people take it too seriously in a way. Like they want to be like, oh, well, you have to be this, or this. And it's like, really, it's all how you feel comfortable.
I feel like how we've come to identify gender is a very kind of individualistic thing. Like gender is how you personally identify and everything. I feel like that's part of it, but it also kind of ignores the fact that there are material conditions that define our gender and how we're treated based on that. Like that's where I think my definition differs a lot. Because even though I identify as non-binary, I am woman-aligned and I'm going to be woman-aligned. And because of that, it's how I'm still subject to misogyny and the patriarchy and all those different things.
It's honestly really invasive whenever somebody asks you if you have dysphoria or if you're going to transition completely. Because I've personally had people ask me, are you gonna get the surgery and everything? When I identified as being a trans man, people would ask me that, and it's like, you're not entitled to that information. You're not entitled to know if I want to get surgery or not, because it's my choice. It's really something that only concerns me and like a doctor. you shouldn't ask unless I tell you. I've always kind of compared it to, like, if you asked a man if he was circumcised. Like, you wouldn't ask that in a normal conversation. You're not entitled to that information. Or with situations when you come out to somebody as trans and their basically first question to you is, oh, well, what did your name used to be? And it's like, well, you're not entitled to that information either.
What are your personal feelings about gender and gendered energies? Do you feel gender on a spiritual level? Do you relate gender more to your physical appearance? Both? Neither? The question is whatever you want it to be and whatever you want to say about your gender identity and expression.
So my personal feelings about gender and gendered energies is that, like, I don't really think that energies can have a specific gender. I don't really understand gender in general, so personally I don't feel connected.
I started thinking, like, well, I never really felt comfortable being seen as a girl. I've never felt comfortable going by my birth name. Like, it genuinely upsets me just because I really related with such bad feelings. And so I already wanted to distance myself from that. And I thought about it a lot, and then I kind of came to the conclusion, maybe I'm a trans guy. And so for a few years, I identified as a trans man. I would bind sometimes, but kind of stopped after a while because it got to be kind of painful to do that for so long. After I kind of got out of high school, I kind of felt disconnected from either identifying as a man or a woman. I didn't feel an attachment to either. And so that's why I say that I'm non-binary now. Just because I really just want to be me. I don't want to be seen as either or.
I just would like to exist as, like, kind of like a genderless blob. Just kind of floating through life, wearing what I want, doing what I want. Not because it makes me look a certain way or because I'm expected to look that way or, like, you know, talk a certain way or act a certain way. I don't feel, and I guess that kind of answers the next question. I do not feel gender on a spiritual level. I feel like at the end of the day, gender is a very material thing. But for what I'm doing, with my life, I don't see the importance of being attached to a gender. For as much sense as that makes. But unfortunately, we live in a society, as people say.
Do you feel gender on a spiritual level? I just want to say probably not. No, I don't think so.
And I guess I don't really feel it on, I guess, a spiritual level. Or maybe I do. I don't know.
Like, I don't know, my gender is kind of a big part of who I am, but I also don't think about gender, like, as a thing, because I feel like I'm someone without gender. I'm non-binary. Gendered energies, I feel like, if that means, like, masculine and feminine, I guess I sort of understand that. But I wouldn't say that energies have a gender. Like, there are no male energies or female energies, more so like there are feminine and masculine energies. Do you relate gender more to your physical appearance? Well, I've always been told that I have a feminine personality and a masculine appearance, and I guess I agree with that, since I guess I have some masculine traits appearance-wise, like, for example, my short hair.
I end up relating gender more to my physical appearance a lot of the time, and I do end up wearing more, like, quote, quote, masculine, unquote, like, clothing. I do end up trying to, like, present more mask on a daily basis with the way I just like walk and talk and take up space.
I guess like because I look masculine, I like when people kind of sometimes call me like a boy or something, but not like all the time. So because I look like kind of like a boy.
I've looked at pictures of me like in the past when I was in high school, and it's like I really passed a lot as being male. And one time I remember I was at this convention, and this lady called me sir, and I came back to my friends. I was like, she called me sir, guys, and they were like, oh yeah. And I was like, I'm being treated with respect in here.
I feel like anyone can be non-binary. It doesn't matter how you express yourself. I know people that are AFAB, assigned female at birth, and they are feminine presenting, but still non-binary. And they're often invalidated because of their appearance and misgendered because people just like assume because they're feminine presenting that they use she, her pronouns, but it's very hard for people that are non-binary to be validated. It's hard for non-binary people to be validated when there are like stereotypes that people hold, like there's like a bias that people hold, and so they assume that people who are feminine presenting like use she, her, even if they're like non-binary.
Like, I wish I could ask people to use they, them pronouns for me, but I get worried that if I do, people may have an issue with that. I wish I could bind my chest more, but it's just kind of painful for me, just because my chest is kind of big, and so it's just hard to do that.
Which sucks that I feel like I have to do that, but essentially I do relate my gender more to physical appearance, and I would like to stop doing that. Yeah.
Moving away from the more like personal stuff, I guess. How do you feel about the recent strides in society to be more inclusive towards trans and non-binary, non-conforming folk? Do you have any examples of this from mainstream media or fashion?
I feel like I only see this stuff because I am trans and non-binary, so a lot of like the ads are targeted at me, probably because I was searching something. I'm not really sure, but I know that I get a lot of ads for like boxers with space for packers, which are basically stand-to-pee devices that are also gender affirming. Like, it's kind of like a flaccid fake penis they stuff in your boxers. And then they make other things, like, I don't know, there's just so many cool things. I don't know if it's really mainstream though.
I think there have been a lot of like good strides lately to be more inclusive of trans and gender non-conforming and non-binary people. Just like, for example, with like Target being like, hey, explicitly saying, hey, use the bathroom of like the gender you identify with, and like taking like girls and boys markers off like the aisles for toys and stuff. I do think that's actually kind of cool.
How do I feel? I feel like it's amazing. I think it's like really great that people are like actually taking time to like recognize trans folks and like make things specifically for them. But also, I don't think any like sort of clothing or anything have gender, so sometimes I just feel like targeted stuff like that is just like a capitalist type thing, but I don't know. I'm glad that trans people are being recognized.
Like, I feel like some strides in society have been inclusive, but in other cases they really haven't been. It's like a lot of times they'll just cast like cis people to play the roles of trans people, like what's her name, Scarlett Johansson.
Mm-hmm.
She was cast to play a trans guy, and it's just like you couldn't get like an actual like trans person to be in this role.
But I've seen like in like those, I don't know if it was the Grammys or something, some award ceremony, a lot of like celebrities dressing in like more non-binary fashion or like something like that.
Can probably name like one book I've ever read that has someone in it who is non-binary. Like, it's nothing. Doesn't feel like there is really any representation whatsoever.
As far as like just like representation, specifically of like non-binary and non-conforming people, I remembered this the other day. The Ruby Rose video, the Break Free video, where they're presenting traditionally feminine, and then they go through this whole transformation to turn into, you know, to become more masculine and everything in the video. And when that first came out, I thought that was like so cool and groundbreaking. And I was like, oh, that captures how I feel. And I watched it back yesterday, and that's such a shitty representation of like just gender fluid or gender non-binary or non-conforming people. One, because it has this very particular image of like masculinity. Two, this is something we haven't quite recovered from after that video came out. Non-binary and like gender non-conforming people, the image for that has become white and skinny, you know, like the super like cut jawline and like cheekbones and stuff, and like that's cool and all, but I don't look anything like that. Yeah, decent strides have been made and everything, but as far as like representation goes, it's not great. As far as like fashion goes, even with like, you know, gender non-conform or like gender neutral like clothing lines and stuff like that, it's always very masculine leaning, and even the models those are on generally are thin, and they're generally thin and white, and if they're not white, they're still thin, and it's usually just a lot of like what is essentially masculine clothing worn by people of different genders, and none of it is ever fashioned to look good on bigger people, and that sucks.
And so it is, like, I feel like in some cases there have been strides to be more inclusive, but at the same time, there aren't as many strides as there should be.
Do you feel your intersections are represented in mainstream media? Well, that's really hard to answer. Actually, it's not really that hard to answer because I'm a queer trans person of color. I'm Vietnamese. I'm non-binary. I'm Catholic. I don't know.
Do you feel your intersections are represented in mainstream media? Not at all. As a plus size, non-binary, black, bisexual, woman assumed person, not at all.
I live in white America, so I don't really think I'm represented that much. Except for there's this like queer trans person, I think, and their name, I think they're Asian. I mean, I can name like a few people that are can sort of represent me. Like, Ian Alexander is a trans actor. And then Chella Man, he's a trans man. He's like also Asian. And I think Nikita Dragon. Yeah. She's trans, Asian. So in some ways, I feel like I can sort of be represented, but it's not like a big deal type of person. Like people don't, I mean, it's a big deal for like trans people, trans Asian people, but I don't think it's a big deal for like other people.
I feel like most of the non-binary representation we get, if any, it's like some thin, like white person who's more masculine identified. If anything, it's aggravating to see that be the only representation, because it also makes me feel bad about myself.
I rarely, if ever, see people who look like me in media. I never really saw that growing up, and by the time I did, I'm gonna argue it was too late for me to save my body image and how I see myself. And I don't say that to be a sad thing. It's just like a statement of fact.
So representation matters. Chalaman was sort of like a role model to me, except for his hair is kind of questionable. But
yeah, long story short, no. It's not even a matter of do I feel it. They're definitely, my intersections are definitely not represented in mainstream media.
The last question, which is like, what steps would you like to see taken toward better representation?
Mm-hmm.
people have tried, and the only thing that you can do is keep trying and keep putting out more representation, more like, I don't know, disabled people.
You should have like maybe like one of the main characters be like, I'm non-binary, I use they them, and then everybody just be cool with it, and it doesn't change the story. It's just this character's non-binary, and it's like not that hard to be inclusive,
They should just make a Cinderella that's non-binary, or a Disney princess, Disney Princess? No, I don't know. They should make a Disney royalty person. They just need Disney princesses and princes and Disney royalty that is queer and non-binary and people of color. I don't know.
Better representation starts with hiring people who look like me.
Steps for more representation. I don't know, just like actually hire people of color and stuff and listen to them. Not really sure, but that's all I have.
Whether that's, in like fashion design, that's fashion designers, directors, writers, actors, just like in every step of the process. There should be more people of color, there should be more non-binary people, there should be more, like non-straight people.
If you're going to have representation, you shouldn't just limit it to like a one kind of way. Representation comes in many different forms and figures and everything.
I think, honestly, I think we are starting to take good steps towards that. I think also an important thing for better representation is to make sure that the stories people are telling are told unapologetically, and they are told without being altered in a way so that they fit like society's ideas, or that society's comfortable with them. I feel like that's an issue we run into sometimes. It's like we don't tell the stories you want to tell, or the stories we're telling are severely altered because other people won't receive them well or stuff like that. And I think that's something that shouldn't happen. I think personally stories should be told in all like authenticity and their truth. People should live their truths 100% and be vulnerable. People should be okay with like that being in media, because at the end of the day, art imitates life and life imitates art. And if it's like if our art isn't actually like showing what's going on and like showing people's perspectives and like lived experiences, and like what's the point?
Thanks.
That make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.